you're doing most of your work with hand tools, right? So you're using saws to cross-cut boards, and especially with big boards, like the board for my sliding vise chop here. It's a 2-inch thick board. You make that cross-cut, and you know, it might be a little bit harder to get it perfectly square, perfectly plumb, because you're dealing with a large piece of stock. You got to true it up. Got to true up that end and keep it square and parallel to the opposite face. I suppose you could use a shooting board, but when you get into larger stock, it gets even harder to plane across that wide surface. Shooting boards, among some people, would probably be considered a crutch, so why not learn to square the end grain without the shooting board? Let's come over here to the vise and I'll show you how to do it. So here's the board that I'm looking to square up the end on. This is actually the chop for my sliding leg vise, and it's the bottom of it, and you know, it's not imperative that this be square. It's really not a reference face at all, but as an exercise to show you how to square up the end grain, when I originally cut it to length using my saw, I scribed a cut line all the way around on all 4 sides of the board. Now I've gone ahead and cut the decorative chamfer on the bottom, but I've also got a line scribed. This line was scribed square to this face, so I know this line is good. And what I've done is gone along with a block plane and cut a chamfer all the way around that matches up to my line. And as you can see, the chamfer gets wider as it moves down the board, because the board itself is slightly out of square this way as well as this way. And you look on this end, you see the chamfer is a little bit uneven as well, but the bottom of this chamfer is in line with my cut line, which that cut line is square and parallel to the opposite end of the board as well as both faces. So now that that chamfer is cut with a block plane, I can either, using the same block plane or any other plane, continue to work this end grain until those chamfers disappear all the way around. It's the same method in using a scribe line. Cut that scribe line and basically plane until the scribe line disappears on all 4 sides. So I'm going to use my low angle jack plane here to cut this. Again, low angle because I'm cutting end grain. And again, because I've got a chamfer on this end, I can go ahead and plane across the width and not worry about spelching or tearing out the grain on this long grain face. I turned off the overhead fluorescence in my shop here and just using incandescents, so hopefully you can get a better contrast of the board here. Now, again, my board is out of square this way. This side is higher than the chamfered side, so I'm going to be focusing my efforts on the far side of the board. And if you have a blade with a cambered iron, which I could use my 4-plane, I'm taking so little wood off here, plus I'm working end grain, I want to work with a low angle plane. So it's not so much about using the cambered iron to do it, but it's a little bit of pressure. Knowing that I need to take more wood off on this side, it is simply a matter of leaning a little bit more into this side of the plane. Or what I do is, using the hand on the tote, I kind of twist it a little bit. Now I'm grossly over exaggerating. It's more of, almost thinking like you're twisting it in order to take that wood off. What's really useful as well is the end grain itself. The rough cut nature of the board, using a handsaw, you can see the rough sawn parts here, and this polished part is where I've already taken wood off, and you can see I'm removing wood from the high side of the board. If I continue in this aspect, essentially once the board is polished all the way across, I should be at my chamfered lines. Okay, the chamfer is almost gone from this edge. Now obviously the key to this operation is having a really sharp plane blade. That is a ribbon of ingrain you're seeing there. I freshly sharpened this blade. Anytime you're going to do some ingrain planing, it's a good idea just to pop over to your sharpening stones and freshen up that edge. And this is another great reason why I use micro bevels on my plane blades and my chisels for that matter, because it's really, really quick to go in and just quickly freshen up that micro bevel. You may find that it helps to skew the blade a little bit. I like to skew it because it gives me just a little bit more plane referenced on the board too. And I can get a continuous ingrain shaving like that. Now, I think that we're there. My chamfered edges, got just a tiniest bit of one right there. And I'll always take one more pass along the length of the board. And that should be it. So here's the test. That board is dead on square. We'll check in the other dimension. And it is completely square across that edge as well. So there you go. Simple as that. Proper marking, proper layout, and you can get it perfectly square on a tough surface like ingrain. And if you look real close, you can see what an absolutely stunning finish we have on that ingrain. It's polished and gleaming, and you're not going to find ingrain prettier than that.